What up, y'all? It's your boy Dre.
And this girl Cash.
We back with another video.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Y'all see who we got. No one other than Cash Geographic. Animal diseases that belong in a horror movie. Damn. I know he about to come with something crazy on this one. But if y'all new to our channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and cut that bell on so you know we dropping these videos. Ready to get into it?
Let's get into it.
Let's go. Make sure y'all got y'all snacks too. Y'all be forgetting sometimes. Get your snacks.
Drinks, or whatever.
We ain't even got no snacks right
Right.
now. As long as y'all got them, we good. Let's go.
What is going on?
Why are you on this?
Oh, I thought the thing was screaming.
Right.
Hey,
Oh.
hold up.
Why are you on this?
Spooky season. You knew this was coming. We're always talking about all the ways nature and the things in it can put you on a shirt, but we never talked about how diseases can have animals permanently parallel to the ground. Wow. So that's what this video is. Animal diseases that are rated R, for the regret I feel when I see what researching them has done to my search history. And of course, viewer discretion is very much advised. Especially for disease number 1. What's a Halloween video without a jump scare? This photo was taken just outside the Caribbean Bay Hotel in Zimbabwe of what appears to be a hairless baboon. The deep-pelted primate appeared to be an outcast, only following her troop from a distance, almost as if she had been rejected for her appearance. And according to a nearby vet, the most likely cause for this abandoned baboon's condition, mange. Mange is a nasty-looking disease caused by parasitic mites burrowing into the skin, where their collective feces can cause severe allergic reactions and an unbearable amount of itching. That's why the main calling card of mange is turning animals into the most down bad version of themselves. And while the word mangy is usually an insult reserved for dogs, these mites can be a certainty from anything from foxes, to bears, to porcupines, occasionally birds like eagles, and many, many more. In fact, the legend of the chupacabra was more than likely jump-started by a severely mited up coyote. And in 1996, there was an outbreak of sarcoptic mange that griefed a family of mountain gorillas in Uganda, even expiring one of their babies. The mites themselves aren't a death sentence, but they slowly weaken the target, making them much more vulnerable to infections. And they can easily spread, especially if you're a wombat whose burrow mates with a walking mite mosh pit. The mites are so persistent that in Pennsylvania, a black bear with more than 50% hair loss is considered a lost cause, and not only is it retired from life, it's also incinerated, so the past tense bear can't possibly infect any others. And yes, mange is zoonotic, meaning it can be passed on from animals to humans, and when that happens, it's called scabies. To be fair, it's normally easy to treat in people, but those with weak immune systems or those taking immunosuppressants can find themselves gatekept from a life of comfort. There's also Demodex mites, which shack up in hair follicles, and even a couple species that make their home in the human eye. So yeah, mange just might be the most aesthetically upsetting ailment here. The polar opposite of the next disease, because where mange is visually visceral, zoochosis is almost purely psychological. You've probably heard of the condition where animals in captivity do the same thing over and over with no goal or purpose, almost like they're in a trance, and one of the most popular examples of this are those videos of elephants swaying back and forth. Except zoochosis is much more than that. Of course, you have your swaying and almost neurotic pacing around their enclosure, but the zoochosis signature also includes excessive grooming, personal punishment like self-biting and self-mutilation, turning puke into an infinite food glitch, and coprophagia, even in animals that wouldn't normally do it. But the disturbing part is, like mange, it's believed that zoochosis can also be contagious. If an animal is housed next to one exhibiting the stereotypes associated with it, chances are that same animal will too. This captive psychosis is likely triggered by a lack of stimulation and enrichment, and is more common in higher intelligence animals, especially those that would normally have a wider range. Elephants checking both boxes is likely why 40% of captive turned pachyderms show symptoms of zoochosis. Orcas are one of the smartest non-human creatures alive and can travel well over 40 miles a day for food. And almost a year ago today, in 2022, a captive orca named Hugo tragically resigned from reality after violently slamming into his tank wall until he suffered a life-ending aneurysm. And in 2005, a mother hamadryas baboon groomed her baby so excessively that he looked like he came out the womb beefing with wizards. To be fair, we can't really prove that this was zoochosis working overtime, but bro got the Mr. Clean Cut. That ain't a fade, it's a flea. But the most popular and probably most depressing case of zoochosis was Gus. Gus was a polar bear that lived in Central Park Zoo for 25 years. At one point, visitors and keepers noticed that Gus would spend all day swimming in figure eights, sometimes for up to 12 hours straight. Keep in mind that polar bears can cover nearly 50 miles in a day searching for seals. Not only did the zoo spend 25 grand on therapy for the bear, Gus went on to make history as the very first zoo animal to be put on Prozac. Speaking of which, the 25,000 bones of behavioral therapy basically amounted to the therapist saying, "It be like that." This isn't an anti-zoo video or me trying to morally grandstand to y'all. I think zoos have the potential for a lot of good and a lot of bad. It's just that the bad can lead to a chronically pilled out polar bear. But wait, it gets darker. Because with how far removed humans have gotten from nature, there's a legitimate fear that humanity as a whole could be suffering from zoochosis on a global scale. That joke about us being no different than ants stuck in a death spiral becomes less and less of a joke as time goes on. Do you remember the Will Smith movie I Am Legend? You know, before his wife publicly neutered him and then smoked both his family jewels in 2 packs? Well, the post-apocalyptic movie started with a doctor attempting to re-engineer the measles virus in an attempt to find a cure for cancer, instead infecting 99% of the human race. A pretty good example of what can happen when humans try to play God with the natural order. Another example is what happened in Florida, specifically Silver Springs State Park. It's Florida's very first tourist attraction, famous for having a couple Tarzan movies shot there. And in the 1930s, tour boat operator Colonel Toohey was looking for a way to spice up his jungle cruise ride. So he brought in 6 Reese's macaques and had them placed on a small island in the park. And it was at this moment they f***ed up. Apparently, nobody involved was told that the monkeys could swim, and the moment they touched down on dry land, the macaques proceeded to swim out to the mainland. And following lots of multiplying without a calculator, there are now currently hundreds of rogue macaques, with a good number of them carrying a deadly herpes virus. Herpes B is an incapacitating condition that can cause severe brain inflammation, permanent neurological damage, and a permanent lease in a casket-shaped condo. Now, fear-mongering aside, the chances of catching it from a monkey are incredibly rare, but not rare enough to be zero. In 1997, a researcher was working with a Reese's when she was splashed in the eye by indeterminate fluids. Even after immediately flushing her eye out for several minutes, the 22-year-old died December 10th, 1997, almost exactly 6 weeks after first being exposed. According to the Center of Disease Control, since 1932, there have been 51 cases of people being infected with the B virus, with 21 deaths and an 80% mortality rate for those untreated. That same fatal virus is currently being backpacked by up to a quarter of the hundreds of macaques running around the Sunshine State. Worse, it's believed they shed the potent virus through their saliva. So far, there's no known case of one of these Marion County monkeys passing off the virus to a human. The problem is, the monkeys have managed to lose their natural fear of humans, and there was even one incident where the park had to be shut down after a family was threatened and chased by an especially malicious macaque. It's the worst kind of invasive, and it's 100% our fault, and although the virus-peddling primates haven't caught a human body, it's definitely one of those cases of F around and find out.
Damn sure don't want to find out.
One of the most unsettling diseases in nature is a sickness that affects deer, known as chronic wasting disease. Called so because it essentially destroys the animal from the inside out. In fact, this type of disease is a transmissible spongiform encephalopathy, a name that literally comes from the fact that it causes several sponge-like holes in the brain. It's like the forbidden final boss of trypophobia, and it's caused by a single misfolded protein known as a prion. This prion triggers a chain reaction where the only outcome is a canceled life subscription, and the only thing the victim can do is wait for the sweet release of death. Here's what the endgame of a deer with CWD looks like. It starts with a misfolded protein affecting and altering perfectly normal proteins. It's almost like a cellular level cheese touch, and the moment it starts, it's already over. Step 2 includes the prions exploding in numbers exponentially and accumulating in the body, the whole time the deer, elk, or moose looks and acts perfectly normal. The deer can walk around with this disease for 2 whole years before the chronic becomes critical. Eventually, it escalates to the point where the prions manage to break into the blood-brain barrier, where they start destroying neurons, putting enough holes in the brain to get it cursed out by an octopus, and slowly wasting the poor, unexpecting deer. Deer with CWD seem unable to process anything around.
So I wonder, damn, we're about to fall over. I wonder, like, people who deer hunt and stuff like that, does that have any type of effect on humans too?
Humans, especially if they eat them.
Yeah, they eat them. And they said it can have it for like 2 years and stuff.
And we wouldn't even know.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wasting the poor, unexpected deer. Deer with CWD seem unable to process anything around them, including danger. And if predators or playing freeze tag on the freeway doesn't take them off the senses, they die a slow and painful death to starvation as their brains shut down. The worst part is, the nightmare doesn't end once the deer does, since the prions responsible can exist in an area years after the victim, and can even be absorbed by plants in contaminated soil. That's assuming they don't just leach into groundwater. In fact, the only surefire way to eliminate a prion is literally that: fire. Except, it's not as simple as cremating a casualty. That'd be too easy. It's said that it takes heat at a minimum of 900 degrees Fahrenheit or 482 degrees Celsius to properly pack up a prion, and some sources say to hike that up to 1800 to be safe. But the part that makes prions one of the most horrific things not native to a horror movie is where they come from. It's believed there are 3 main factors that cause prion diseases. Genetics play a relatively small part, with only 10 to 15% of cases in people being attributed to them. The second and by far most common cause is the disease being sporadic. Basically, that just means that not even science can fully explain where they come from, but that it's like it happens out of nowhere. And the third is an infected deer contaminating something like a water source or a feeding station with body fluids and passing it off to the next. And remember, not only can prions insist on existing years after the fact, keep in mind that most infected deer look no different from any other, right until it's time to disconnect from interface eternally. That means that the 3 main causes of wasting disease are completely RNG, and that is remarkably terrifying. And it's not just deer that can get packed up by prions. There's mad cow disease in cattle, and scrapie in sheep, named after the fact that it can cause them to compulsively rub up against things like fence posts until they literally scrape their wool off. There's even a human equivalent, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. And while there's no known reports of a human ever catching CWD, specialists have warned that with the thousands of CWD infected animals eaten by people a year, there's a growing concern that the disease may eventually be transmitted to people. But maybe it's still a lot better than the last, and in my opinion, the most horrific disease in this video. Because not only is rabies one of the harshest death sentences nature can serve, it is 100% transmissible to humans. Rabies is said to bury nearly 60,000 people a year, and since the most common way to get it is through dog bites, it's the worst in places with a high stray population. Which is why India, a country that criminalized murking stray dogs, has about 20,000 names crossed off the census a year by rabies. And it's children that are especially at risk, with about 40% of deaths coming from those 15 years old or younger. Here's what it's like to be turned into a statistic by rabies. It starts with the virus entering the peripheral nervous system, usually through a bite. Then, it travels inside you through nerves until it reaches part of the central nervous system, or the spinal cord. From there, it's a straight shot directly to the brain, and at this point, you can start drafting your will cause ain't no way. While you can treat the virus before it reaches the brain, once it does, you're almost guaranteed to become a wuss. The virus then multiplies, then spreads throughout the body, slowly killing you from the brain out. But the underrated and truly sinister aspect of rabies is how it seemingly rewires your brain for its own purposes. One of the telltale signs of rabies is a crippling fear of water, where just a sight or suggestion of it can cause incredibly painful spasms in the throat and larynx. At the same time, the virus attacks the salivary glands, causing excessive drooling and the foaming at the mouth the disease is famous for. And that's because the virus is most concentrated in the mouth, and swallowing or drinking water would dilute it, so the hydrophobia helps keep the mouth and all the nastiness inside as potent as possible. And that's not the only way rabies manipulates its mark. There's believed to be 3 stages of rabies in animals. You got the prodromal stage, and that's where the animal might start showing minor changes in behavior. And then you got the phase likely everyone associates with rabies, the excitative stage. It's been called furious rabies since it's characterized by heightened aggression and random outbursts of violence. Animals that would normally be wary of people, such as foxes, can attack completely out of nowhere with bites. And remember, being a water bigot just makes that bite that much more toxic. And then there's a paralytic or dumb stage, where the animal appears unaware and disconnected from the world around it. This is where you might see a normally introverted mammal show zero fear in humans. But don't be fooled, they're still liable to bite to serve the virus's purpose. The nightmare usually ends with the animal flatlining to respiratory arrest as its body finally just gives up. And your fate is almost no better if you're a human, since rabies has one of the highest KD ratios of any disease, even though it's also one of the oldest. It flexes a nearly 100% fatality rate, but nearly means there's still a chance. In 2004, 15-year-old Gina Giese contracted rabies after being infected by a bat, and the moment she started experiencing symptoms, she was, statistically speaking, a walking corpse. Dr. Willoughby, who had studied up on rabies, figured their last chance was to put the teenager in a coma in a last-ditch effort to save her brain and give her body a reasonable chance to fight off the virus. About a week after she was induced, Gina miraculously started producing rabies antibodies, and after Eurostepping death, she would go through the grueling rehab of relearning how to walk, talk, and even stand. Because even when you're lucky, it ain't easy being Giese. She became the first person to ever survive the rabies virus without a vaccination, and even went on to start a family. But don't get it twisted, the Milwaukee protocol that saved her has been used on 41 people, and only 6 have survived. The ones that do still run the risk of waking up severely disabled, which is the best you can do when negotiating with death, since that's exactly what treating rabies is. It's a horrifically debilitating disease, and even though it takes about 1 to 3 months to show symptoms after being infected, there have been cases of people walking around with the virus for 7 years. At the same time, if the virus manages to invade you close enough to your brain, you can easily be down bad less than a week after being exposed. With a virtually 100% kill rate, and the thousands that lose their lives to it a year, it's definitely one of the most unforgiving viruses out there. Which is why the greatest basketball player of all time isn't Michael Jordan, LeBron James, or even Kobe Bryant. It's Manu Ginobili. Because during a Spurs-Kings game in 2009, a bat managed to find its way inside the arena, causing everyone to immediately panic. Until the 6'5" Argentinian backhanded the bat and put it out of commission, and proceeded to help lead his team to a 20-point win, along with a victory by TKO against the bat. One man managed to potentially solo one of the deadliest viruses of all time, and he wasn't even a starter. And you'll never guess what day this happened. Yeah, that's right. Happy Halloween. Stay safe out there.
Cases of hemorrhage are regularly rare. Only 1 or 2 cases reported annually. That's about less than half one.
Damn.
Never 0. Wow. I tell you always learn something with Cats Geographic.
You sure do.
Damn.
Especially those diseases you never heard of.
That's crazy and
Like
it's
the
sad
deer
to
get
see.
killed from the inside out.
Yeah, that's the one.
Damn.
It's sad to see animals like that, and there's nothing that they can do, and nobody can really help them.
Right. Like how animals get mange, I can't pronounce it.
That's just look terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew somebody who had a dog who had mange. Is it mange?
Everybody call it different mange.
Mange, yeah.
Whatever.
And man, he had looked so bad. I felt so bad for him. I think they had took him to the vet and then they had given him some
Put him
treatment.
down?
No.
Oh, they kept him?
No,
That's
he's
good.
still here.
That's good. That's crazy. Let us know your opinions down below. How do y'all feel about these animal diseases that belong in the horror movie? Most of them really do, and it's sad.
Yeah. That
These
is
animals can get
sad.
that kind of stuff and just be all discombobulated. And
Discombobulated.
stuff.
It's
And
like
you
the
gotta
sheep
put them down.
doing something to make all the hair
The
come
wool
off,
stuff
wool come off.
and-
Yeah.
That's sad, y'all. How y'all feel about it? Let us know down below in the comment section. Let us know what other videos y'all also want to see us react to. Drop it down in the comment section, y'all. Get in tune with the game. We'll catch y'all next video.
Catch y'all next one.